talk about India, the local media generally talks about China and Pakistan.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on that?
I mean, that's a hard one because, again, from a vendor standpoint, it's very difficult to pin the blame without the additional insights from intelligence. I think that when it comes to economic advantage, it could almost be any country. You know, and so that's why I think is so interesting about this exfiltration, and that it's been specifically targeting industries for competitive, presumably competitive gain. So I think that I think it makes sense for a lot of countries to blame China, for example. But one of the things that I like to say is that if we don't, as a world, take care of our vulnerabilities, take care of the gaps in our security protections, then it's going to be like the robber at the front door that's been left open. So can we really blame that other country, or do we need to reflect back on ourselves in terms of what we're doing or not doing to responsibly protect ourselves? And I think that's the part that, you know, we really try to focus our customers on. What do I not know? Where is my data? Is the data that I regard as the most sensitive or proprietary or the most valuable to my company even to have economic success, am I doing everything I can to protect that data? Or am I going to blame the other guy for stealing it because I didn't appropriately protect it?
India has a recent in defense systems. So 600 systems were inspected, which include DRDO, ISRO, and all. So the blame again was on some other mission. What could have been the impact of this? And I think Stuxnet worm was one. So what is your take on that?
Without knowing the specific details of the attack, I mean, Stuxnet, you know, clearly could have been a case of sabotage in this country. I mean, clearly Iran was the one that suffered the most, and, you know, there's a lot of obviously conjecture as to whether that was the only target or not. You know, again, it goes back to what I was saying about the exfiltration of data and the sabotage previously. It could have had phenomenal impact, or it could have been sending a message for one part of the network to be brought down. The exfiltration could have tremendous economic loss for this country, or it could have been just sensitive information that didn't necessarily amount to much. I think the broader thing is to use it as a wake-up call before it does bring down the entire grid, or it does bring down the IT infrastructure within the government. And I'm hoping that out of even Night Dragon, for example, the oil and gas companies have learned, here are the things that I need to do. My proprietary data deserves my utmost protection, and here's what's going to happen to me. I'm going to lose competitive advantage. I'm going to have other ramifications in my bidding or my exploration and all of the investments that I've made in those. This is what will happen if I don't better protect it. So I almost feel like we've all had the advantage of a wake-up call. Stuxnet could have created much more damage to us around the world than it did.
I don't know if you're aware of National E-Governance Plan of India. There are a lot of mission mode projects which are going on, like one government of corporate affairs, Minister of Corporate Affairs, then passport office, which government is trying to do in public-private partnership. Do you see any impact, or how can these new projects which are coming up make themselves secure to such one?
Well, I think one of the things is to completely look to CERT India as a great resource. You've got a lot of cybersecurity expertise in that organization. They are really charged with helping these organizations, and unlike anybody that's an outsider looking in, they have perspective on what has particularly impacted the Indian government in the past. Here are the lessons learned. Here is where, from a commonality standpoint or from a trending standpoint, we've seen problems in the past, and they have a perfect opportunity to be advisors on these projects. And I think that's where you can really start to leverage when everybody uses the terminology public-private partnership, because like ourselves, we have a very good relationship with CERT India. Other organizations do as well. So we can hone our collective cybersecurity expertise on the problems. Here's what we've experienced from our customer base. CERT India coming in and saying, here's what we've seen with the Indian government over time, and really work together to help advise them as they roll out new projects like the UID project and some of the others.
What about the UID project? It's the biggest project happening in India. So,
clearly, yes.
Are you looking forward to helping Mr. Nandan Nilekani in that? Or?
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is, you know, the thing that's exciting about going to conferences like FutureGov, and you can hear in more detail about these projects. And certainly our local team is very well, you know, involved in helping advise on these projects. So we will absolutely continue to look forward to doing that and making sure that something that is the magnitude of the UID project and as important as it is to the country, that we make sure we provide the level of cyber security expertise that they'd like us to. Absolutely.
You have worked out some partnership already on the project?
The partnerships that we have on the project, I don't know. I'm not familiar with the details.
Partnership on the project, but yes, you know, we are working from the perspective of, you know, the products that we have, and UID is going to be using some of those products.
Yeah.
I won't call it partnership in that sense, because I think they're going to be vendor agnostic. They're going
As
all
of, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But we are part of that project. Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think, you know, to that point also, one of the things that we do with our government, quote-unquote, partners around the world is really work with them to help define the architecture, help model the architecture, and help figure out how it is that we can bring our tools and expertise, or, you know, whatever, to the table. And one of the examples of that is with the U.S. Defense Department, where they knew they wanted some host-based protections, but they wanted it within the context of their own government's regulations for a desktop configuration that they had, you know, required of all of the DoD endpoints. And so we sat down with them in concert with another partner and designed an architecture that worked for them. And we're protecting over 5 million endpoints as a result of that. So that's the value of really sitting down and partnering. And actually from that, we developed a partnership program of third-party vendors that can leverage our management platform from a centralized perspective. So we gain from these partnerships clearly as well, and, you know, and hope to continue to do that with our government partners around the world.
You're working with the U.S. intelligence agency as well. You've worked with the intelligence community in the U.S.
Right, right.
So, I mean, in India, you have any such collaboration? Say, NTRO is their National Technical Research Organization,
Right,
which looks into
right.
such issues. Have you, I mean...
I haven't personally worked with them, but I know that the local team, you know, is, right, exactly, is reaching out to all of the government, actually, so not necessarily, you know, isolated places of the government, but in general, wanting to help.
But you mentioned about certain collaboration.
Yeah.
What happened in this collaboration?
So, I mean, there are a number of things. I mean, one of the things that we were talking about with Dr. Rai the other night is how is it that we can bring cybersecurity education, if you will, to the control systems organizations. And so this is another area, and I alluded to this previously, is that with control systems, they are very, very used to being segregated. They have not previously connected to IP networks. And with the advent now of the smart grid that everyone's talking about, with the two-way communication and more vectors into the network now, literally. I mean, I don't look at it as individual smart meters. I look at it as individual vectors into the network that could bring damage. It's really understanding how we can collaborate to bring education to these organizations who haven't previously had to deal with IP-based threats, for example. And then we collaborate quite closely on the lab side. So our labs down in Bangalore. So our McAfee labs are all over the world. We have researchers and experts in various areas, but we have a very strong presence in Bangalore that's part of that McAfee Labs organization. And Dr. Rai and his team work very closely with our McAfee Labs organization in Bangalore.